でもう注文がいったらコンベヤーでツナが届く。
Feel free to grab plastic bags or paper bags on your own. We're trying to reduce the amount of words spoken by the employees. Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Ayami.
And the topic of the day is introversion in Japan. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a review whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, introversion in Japan. If you're an introvert, you should come to Japan. And on today's episode, we are going to show you why. I guess tell you why. This was inspired, kind of related to last episode, won third places, from a email response we got from our MVP Oddity. But generally speaking, I am, I guess I would say, slightly leaning towards being introverted, but very slightly. Most of the time I've taken introvert or extroversion test of any sort, I'm either basically 50-50, or depending on what it's testing on extroversion, I'm like very extroverted. Because I know there's a bunch of like extroversion, introversion can have a lot of different meanings. For the context of this conversation, I mean, do you think you are extroverted, introverted? Define extroversion or introverted however you want.
なんか私大体 INFJ なのね。でも
So that's a Myers-Briggs.
ん
That's a Myers-Briggs personality test.
そうだね。で、なんかでも最近は、どちら、いい寄りになってきた感じはあるかもしれない。なんか、時によって違うんだよね。でも大体は INFJ かな。そう。
Well, have you, for example, so that's like one personality test, and I'm not going to go into the efficacy for people who
16ね。そうそうそう。
are interested in that about different personality tests or whatever. But I guess from my context, when I've taken the Myers-Briggs, I've gone INTJ, and then sometimes ENTJ, and then like on Big Five, which is, I think, actually used in psychology or psychiatry, both of them, I'm scored very high in that test version of openness. Sorry, extroversion. Also openness, but that's separate. Anyways, so, I mean, go ahead.
そう、なんか多分ね、周りの環境によっても変わると思う。例えば、ジョイが日本に行った時は、だいたい多分もともといいかもしれないけど、よりいいになる気がする。extrovert ね。なんでかっていうとさ、もうだいたい日本の人って、愛なのね。introvert なのね。だからさ、誰かが話さないといけないじゃん。会話を成り立たせるためには誰かが率先してさ、話しかけたり、話題をね、提供したりとかしないといけないから、そうなると、そういう役割をしないといけないのは、まあ、ジョイになるわけだから、それよりいい、エクストリームいいになる気がする。
Yeah, I have a larger burden. That was something that, I guess this is important as a thing to clarify. Because extroversion and introversion already have a bunch of factors to them, there's like, oh, it's about recharging, or it's about what you feel the most, let's say, like, I guess what recharges you the most in the activity. I recharge, but you know what I'm saying? Somebody would be like, oh, I recharge by going to a party. Somebody's like, oh, I recharge by going in my like bed by myself and I don't know, listening to music. And then other versions of introversion, extroversion are like, you are just socially competent, or you feel comfortable around other people. And all that together, we're going to just call introversion, extroversion, whatever you want. And yeah, I think what you said is totally right. Also, so in Japan, according to at least my Japanese searching, 1 in 3 people are introverted. But that's by whatever metrics. I couldn't even find what metrics they were using for a lot of these surveys. And something tells me if Americans were in the same group of Japanese people, like if they pooled together both groups and tested them under the same criteria, I would not be surprised that suddenly that 1/3 would be like 80% or 90%.
確かに。待って。3人に1人しか introvert じゃないの。日本。
According to Japanese surveys of Japanese people. What I'm saying is, well, what I'm saying is if you included Americans and they did the same thing, then I think relatively speaking, it would skew, and then Japanese people would be way more introverted. But
絶対
I've come
そ
here to make a claim, which is to convince introverts and Oddity, which self-identified herself as an introvert, the benefits of Japan being an introvert. I, as a borderline introvert extrovert, cannot say I think these are all positive things, but my goal is to reframe a lot of these things as positives for, I don't know, as a way to encourage more tourism, because we don't have enough people going to Japan, which is not true. But the first thing I've written down is like physical locations that have, let's say, a lot of things geared specifically towards introverts. So a lot of these are common, but I'm going to list them, and then maybe you can probably guess why I'm saying them. But karaoke, we just talked about this on the last episode. Cafes, sushi restaurants, I said that specifically, as well as, I guess, a lot of restaurants in general, but also a lot of clothes stores as well. And so off the top, what I mean by karaoke is probably the most common form of karaoke in Japan is as we mentioned in the previous episode, which is koshitsu, where you have your own private room. And that one's pretty self-explanatory. For cafes, you can have, what's it called? Like manga cafes or other stuff where it's kind of not the same sense as an American one, but you have your own private room. The one that we didn't mention on the last episode, or we didn't talk about, was sushi, specifically like kaiten sushi, so conveyor belt sushi, where a lot of times from entering the building until you leave, you literally do not have to interact with a single human being the entire time. I mean, do you want to explain the kaiten sushi experience?
はいはい。回転寿司は、まあ、そうね。まあ、結構安いね。だいたい安いので有名なんだけど、まあ、100円とか100円台から50円とかから食べられて、まず、チェーンの回転寿司行くと、なんかマシンがあるのね。で、それで、まあ、一緒に来てる人数、例えば4人だったら4人って入力して、テーブルがいいかカウンターがいいか選びます。で、そのチケットが出てくるのね、発見しますと。で、そのチケットを持って自分の番号が呼ばれたらその席に行くのね。で、そのチケットが呼ばれるのとかも全部なんか自動っていうかその機械がやって、例えば自分の番号が23番だったら、23番のお客様お入りくださいとかね。そんな感じになる、ね。
That's a robot telling you that, by the way. So still you have not interacted with a person.
そう。で、まあ、席に着きましたと。席に着いたら、なんかタッチパネルみたいな。まあ、そうね、まあ、想像してもらいたいのは、まあ、iPad っぽい感じ、もうこれぐらいのやつで、それが、なんかブースみたいな席に、の目の前にあるの。で、それを、使って、注文していくのね。ツナが欲しかったら、ツナ入れて、何個とか、入力して、で、もう注文がいったら、なんていうの？コンベアで、ツナが届く。そうそうそう。で、終わり。
Well, I guess at the very end, sometimes you need to talk to pay your bill.
それが、場所によって違うんだけど、なんか、あるところは、お会計の時に店員を呼ぶって押して、なんていうの、お皿の数と、ちゃんと注文した数が合ってるかのチェックが入るんだけど、しないところもあると思うな。とりあえずなんか、もう会計するっていうボタンを押して、で、もうそのままなんていうの、テーブルごとにある、なんかバーコードみたいなやつを、自動会計機に持ってって、
Yeah.
バーコード通していくらです。で、まあ、払うと。結構そういうところも増えてきてる。
I think the only reason that it's funny to me, all of this has been automated except for the part that is automated in the US, which is the paying. Because fundamentally, if everybody just had debit cards, you just go boop in the machine and you should be able to leave. But in Japan, everybody uses cash, so that's like the one thing that still requires someone, because they're not just gonna let you, I don't know, put cash into a register or something. So
でもクレジットとかでも自動改札じゃない。
Oh no, I'm not saying that.
会計。
Oh, that you're saying they have them. I'm just saying I don't think people carrying cards is very common. Actually, not they don't think. We've confirmed this on a previous episode that people don't carry credit cards or debit cards or use them that often.
いや、使うよ。
At least compared to. Well, I mean, compared to every other developed nation.
まあね
Remember, I'm not sure, what was it, like episode 4 or 5, which was like credit cards are useless in Japan? I think
まあ
this
ね
is a
何
long
回か話した
throwback. I bet,
うんうんうん
yeah.
あ
Shout out if you
と
remember that episode.
あとあれだね、多分さ、ちょっとこれはアメリカと比較なんだけど、日本だとさ、チップしなくていいから、自動でできんだよ。なんでいつも自動改札って言うんだろう。自動生産機で、その値段がそのままじゃん。例えばアメリカだとチップをしないといけないからさ、人が来ないとダメでしょ、多分。
Yeah, they pick it up, but a lot of times you leave them, it's funny, you leave the money on the table and then
あ、
you
そうなん
leave.
だ。
Yeah.
なるほど。そ
But
れ
yeah,
はキャッシュ
that's yeah, cash. Yeah, you leave
Oh.
cash. That's like that's funny. That's what you use cash for in America.
あ、そ
Or
う
you
なの
write or you write how much you're tipping with pen and then I think they'll charge it because they already had your card.
うん
It's
なん
weird.
かたまにさ、いくらティップするとか言わないでも勝手にさ、20%とかさ、なんか、なるときあるよね。
Yeah, that's called, what is it? There's a word for it. I can't remember. But yeah, gratuity. Yeah, gratuity fee. There we go. Or something like that. Where they'll just they'll basically increase their prices, and it's kind of like you didn't tip, but they factored in the tip. It's
You
really
kind
weird.
of tip.
But
うん
but yeah, so to cover some other bases, this one, I don't know if this exists in America. It probably does just because America's big. I don't know, New York, California. But Japan is the first place I saw it, which is places that either are straight up unattended by like employees, or the whole point is to appear that they have no employees. So the first example that I was thinking about was it was a clothes store. What are they called in Japanese again? Like if they don't have anybody
無
working there?
人無人のお店
Yeah,
とか。
yeah, yeah. Yeah, mujin no mise. Like,
Mm.
and there was also one for karage. No, was it karage? No, gyoza.
餃子。ある無
餃子
人の。そうそうそう
Yeah, there was one for gyoza and there was one for clothes where you can just walk in and do you just leave cash on the counter? And it's like a full store. This isn't like somebody just put a little stand outside like a lemonade stand. It's just a store. Imagine walking into, I don't know, your local Ross or Walmart or whatever. And then you just grab stuff and leave. I guess Amazon did do something like that, but it automatically charges you on a credit card though. This is like way more trusting. So you just walk in and do you just put the cash on somewhere? Have you actually bought anything at these stores?
あ、私やったことあるよ。その餃子のやつで、まあ、餃子がその冷凍庫か。冷凍庫にいっぱい入ってるのね。でそれで、まあその餃子が例えば、まあ1000円だったら、そのキャッシュをお札、1000円札箱に入れて、で、そのまま持ってくんだけど、ちゃんとね、監視カメラで撮ってますよっては一応書いてあるんだけど、でも多分それは日本人があんまり、なんていうんだろう、盗んだりしないっていう、信頼があるのかなとは思うけど、前なんかニュースで、その餃子の無人のお店で、なんかアイスクリームも売ってるのね。それをなんか、30何個盗むのを何回もやってるなんか男の人がいて、それが、そう、逮捕されたんだけど、まあでもそれもレアだよね。そう。で、あとね、なんだっけな。なんか聞いたことあるのが、アメリカかななんか違う国で、もう、なんだろう。なんだ。アップルウォッチわかんない。かなんかで、クレジットかな入るときになんかタップして、で、お店入って、で、なんか買うものを持って出るだけでもなんかチャージされるみたいなお店
Yeah, those are what I was talking about a second ago, the Amazon grocery
それが
stores.
Amazon か。うん。
Yeah. I've never been to one though.
うん。
But
すごいよね。
to me that's like, I guess similar but a little different because there's not really even, I'm assuming to even get in you have to register your phone or whatever, or it automatically scans it or whatever. Just so, because I have a bunch of stuff listed here, because I want to make this pitch as strong as possible, I guess. So I think we've discussed before how employees tend to not talk that much in Japan, and if they do, they're like very set phrases. But to give you an idea about how artificial the whole interaction is, which if you're introverted is a good thing, is I think when I was like a local supermarket, I noticed there was a sign that they put up that said, feel free to grab plastic bags or paper bags on your own. We're trying to reduce the amount of words spoken by the employees. And they won't ask you if you want a bag.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this? And basically I think you were there when we went there. I think the Japanese were just like, it just said like, we won't ask you for a bag or something. And then it like had a smaller thing and it said like, due to complaints about getting too much talking or whatever, like too many questions or something at the register.
そうなの?
Yeah.
そう、書いてあった
Yeah. Well, every time I see Japanese, I feel inclined to read it.
わかった。あれね、確かね、文脈がね、いちいち聞かないから、袋いるかいらないかいちいち聞かないから、袋欲しい人は自分で取ってカゴの中入れてくださいみたいな感じだったよね。
Yes, that was the first sign, but there was an explainer below explaining why. There's like a smaller.
そこ見てなかった。
Yeah.
そうなの?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's too cumbersome to even ask people if they want a bag or not in Japan. So most of the time, I think a lot of interactions, I don't say a single word when you just get some. What would I even say? What would you? I know what they say. They say, like well, sometimes they ask you for a bag. This place didn't ask you. They just rang you up and then they give you like mata okoshiku gozaimase at the end. But
ね、そうね、セットフレーズだね。なんかレジの人も大変だよね。もういちいちさ、次のお客さんっていうか、まあ買い物来てる人にさ、いらっしゃいませ、って言って、その後にまたお越しくださいませみたいな。そうそう。それをなんか一日中言ってるからね。なんか頭がおかしくなりそう。
Yeah, I could not. That sounds so brain deadening it's like flexing a muscle, I guess, at that point. Like you're not even thinking. But that kind of is a good transition. So those were just, there's one more I guess I mentioned is on top of, I have it listed here, robotic customer service, there are also plenty of stores that have robots. One of the most common one is something called shabu shabu, which is like, it's kind of like what would you call it? It's like I said crock pot? I think that's what it's called. And you like boil meat inside of it and eat it like a thinly sliced meat. And they have these robots with like trays in them, and you order from your own panel, kind of like at a sushi place, and then it comes over like zzz, and then you grab your food from it. That's just a quick aside.
ないのそういうの。そういうのないの?
No, most of the time you have to go up and get it, and that's the whole interaction. Well, at least in America. But I do want to get on because we do have, I mean, at least I have other stuff that I want to mention, just maybe cover some bases we haven't talked before in the podcast. Well, not this. This we have talked about, but it is very important. So those were all like physical things that they set up to encourage like actual business to be more, what's it called? Less sociable, I guess.
Less sociable.
But there's also the large social component as to why this is a thing in the first place. And so things like tatemae, which a lot of the times, which is basically like being polite. A lot of times being polite in Japan actually doesn't mean being polite. It means not saying anything. It means like you don't say anything because if you said something, especially an opinion or a strong opinion, you could offend somebody. So a lot of times you can come off as being super polite, or even your Japanese being good by just not saying anything. I'm saying it's just how you what would you say? Like keeping good posture and like nodding will get you through a lot of conversations. And a lot of times it's the correct etiquette to do. Although you will need to learn, I would say, like a lot of aizuchi, or not a lot, which is like, what do you call that? Like responses to people talking.
相づちを打つ。そうそう、なんか。
Yeah.
あれこうやって日本人がよくやるんだっけ？その、うんとか、その、相手が話してるときにさ、よく、そうだよね、みたいな。言うのが日本人だよね。で、アメリカじゃねえ、まあ、日本以外の国はさ、なんか黙って聞いてる のが普通でしょ？
Well, I mean, there's probably plenty of countries that have a lot of aizuchi. I just think
あ、そう。
Japan's famous for having a lot. And English has aizuchi as well. It's just that, like, for example, I don't know what the word for aizuchi is in English, where there's a word for it in Japan.
そう
And
そう。
another thing oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I just said そうだね。Yeah, I was 相づち。
Oh, okay.
相づち。
And so some examples of how this, in my opinion, like don't say anything, what I would call that comes from Tatema approach, where it manifests is, I don't know if this is true across like now Japan, but in all my personal experiences, plus every anime I've ever seen, plus what my professors have told me, almost all education is lecture only. So in America, a lot of times you'll have like people have a group of tables and the students together and they work together on something and they cross communicate or like have a group discussion. That's like non-existent. So if you're ever considering education in Japan and you hate having to talk to other people, I think the Japan education system would be great for you.
もう完璧よ、もうね、何も、なんか自分からやることがね、あんま少ないね。なんかね、
Well, in my head, the first image that comes in my head is the teacher walking down the center of the class, reading some like Japanese poem or book, and as all the students have like their faces against like on the desk. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So
like, is that a thing? They just walk around. Is that based in reality?
なんか例えばさ、まあ中学高校とかでまあ歴史とかもやるじゃん。歴史じゃなくてもいいけど、なんか普通の授業やるじゃん。その時もだいたい先生が黒板に書いてなんだろう、とりあえず問題解かせたり、教科書ここの説明したりとか言って、受動的なのね。なんかディスカッションとかの授業が本当にないから、だからそれがね、多分日本人があんまり自分の意見持たないとか、につながってんだとは思う。で、疑問を持たない気がする。
What do you actually do in Japanese class? Like, what do the students do?
Japanese class は何？その日本語？それとも日本語？
No. Any class, sorry, education. I'm thinking about it, and even from my personal experiences, anytime I've had a Japanese teacher teach me something, like when I was studying abroad, the whole class was literally, you could just come in, do nothing, and the class would end, and that's the entire class. You just sit there.
なんかね、私の中学高校は
I guess you're supposed to be listening.
私の中学高校は、まあ、ちょっとなんか先進的っていうのを売りにしてて、なんか例えばまあ、数学だったらそれぞれなんだっけな、グループがあって、誰かが前に出てなんか書いて、それのなんかどうやってもうこの問題を解いたかの説明をしろみたいな、ちょっとまあ、
Okay.
その部分ではちょっと先進的な学校だったから、まあ普通の典型的な、ね、日本の学校じゃないとは思うんだけど、でも普通の学校はだいたいまあ、先生が前立ってただ解説して、で生徒はひたすらノートを取るみたいな。でそのノートをこれも私が嫌いなとこなんだけど、なんかちゃんと授業を受けてるかどうかの評価のためにノートをなんか提出しないといけないの。なんかそれが評価対象みたいな。
Like a quiz?
違う。
Wait, oh, you mean literally just the notes you're taking are graded?
そう。なんかノートでちゃんと先生が黒板に書いたことを丸々書いてるかどうかをなんか提出しろって。なんか
That's I would fail that so hard. I would fail that.
そうだからなんか一部の人はさ、全然話聞いてないから友達のノートをその提出期限の前日に借りて徹夜でその丸写しするみたいな。なんか意味ないじゃん。ただの写経じゃん、そんなの。
I've literally never heard of that. Americans out there, have you ever heard of a teacher grading your notes?
そう、本当にいるんだって。私も
I've never heard of that. That is unhinged.
本当になんかバカなんだよね、先生が。ちょっとよくわかんない。
I have our last point, just because we're getting short, and I wanted to mention this, which is Okay, we have like places that are built for introverted people. We have a lot of society expectations making you introverted. There's one more section I want to cover here, which is romance. So, how can you be introverted in romance? Well, romance. My interpretation of it is why communicate with another human being? And if you think communicating with another human being is too difficult, which might be a negative interpretation of introversion, but for this episode we'll go with it. Japan has a lot of catered services for single people. For the first the first thing that I noted here, it's probably not a benefit of being in Japan, but Japan has a huge porn industry, and they're famous for having very weird porn. So I feel like there's enough fetishes in Japan to hopefully what would you call appeal to any sort of preference. But the more realistic services, I'll say, to specifically introverted people is, and a lot of these I think have gotten famous with the guy like marrying Hatsune Miku or whatever, is they have yeah. Do you remember that? Or have we talked about that? The guy who married Hatsune Miku?
初音ミク、その話聞いたことないかも。初音ミクってさ、あれじゃん、なんか VTuber じゃなくて、なんて言うんだろう。まあ、ボカロのさ、キャラクターじゃん。
Vocaloid。
それさ、そういう人が何人もいたらさ、一夫多妻になる。一夫じゃねえや。
Okay.
一夫多妻の逆になる。
So I'm surprised you haven't heard about this, because in the West it's like, it was a pretty, what would you call, viral, I guess? Yeah, a guy basically, so a company sold, it's not like a guy just grabbed his Hatsune Miku doll and married it. I mean, it's kind of like that. But a company sells wife Vocaloid avatars or just holograms in general. So he has like a cylindrical Hatsune Miku, what do you call, hologram that's inside this little device, and he talks to it and it responds back to him. It's kind of like marrying your Siri. But my main point with this is this is an industry, like making things specifically for dudes who, or I mean mostly dudes, but probably women too. I mean, I know there's women too. Because now that's popping off as well with a lot of the I would say like catering with anime and other stuff I saw in like what's it called again? The kabakura or kyabakura?
Kyabakura?
Or is it the gyaku? What's the one for
キャバクラは、
hosto.
あれだよ、麺。
Yeah.
麺ってなんかヌーロみたいな。男の人に対して。そう。
And yeah, and they even have, so if you're like, okay, I just want to hang out with somebody, but I don't actually want to like have to deal with being with another person, like, you know what I'm saying, actually with all the expectations. And I don't know if you've heard of this as well, but this is a thing where you can, I mean, this isn't like a huge industry, but there are people who do this, like kind of as gig work, from what I understand, which is you can rent a like time companion. That's how I would phrase it. Like they'll like if you want to go watch something or want to go on a walk or something, they will follow you in silence. Well, if that's what you want, and they won't say anything, but they'll just be there for you. Or like I watched. Oh, you know what I'm talking about?
わかる。この言葉聞いたことある。パパ活って聞いたことある。
Papa katsu. I know something. I mean, everything katsu. I think we talked about it before, but papa katsu, not specifically. Is that like them being your fake dad?
まあ、いや、なんて言うんだろう。ちょっと説明すると、まあ、男の人ね、いますと。まあ、その年齢はまあ、どちらかというと中年とかのが多いのかな。で、お金持ってるね。で、若い女の子は、まあ、SNS とかなんかで養ってくれるパパを、まあ、募集してますと。で、そのパパたちは、まあ、可愛い女の子とデートがしたいわけ。ね、いや、若いね。で、もしパパ活をしてる女の子がいて、で、その女の子にお金払いたいパパがいると、まあ、出かけて、パパが全部、食事代とか、洋服代とか、女の子が買いたいものを、払ってあげるの。で、女の子は、その分、なんていうの、中年のおじさんたちにずっとなんか、一日一緒に過ごすみたいな。で、その後、まあ何かあるかもしれないけど、まあそういう、なんていうんだろうね。シュードデーティングみたいな。
Yeah, so that definitely exists in America, and that's called being a sugar daddy.
そう、それかも。
I
そう、
would
それ。
not classify that as an introversion thing specifically because you're
まあ
still
まあ
like
ね。
engaging. I was
うん。
more focusing on things where you won't actually have to like truly engage with another person. So like a person will be with you, like if you just want a physical companion to do something,
うん。
or I think this to get people to realize how this is an actual thing. There are a lot of things that are just less awkward if you're going to them with somebody else, whether it be a
うん。
movie or
は
I
い
think
は
a
い。確かにちょっと、う
funeral,
ん。
like a funeral for somebody that you're not that close with, but you feel obliged to go with, or something, or like a wedding. I think these were popular ones that were talked about. Where if you have somebody with you, then it just makes it look less cringy, basically.
はあ。
And
なんかそれも悲し
the
い。
very last one, yeah, I have listed here, which is for is Japan also has a full scale sex dolls industry. So and yeah, so that's something that I feel like if that's something that's up your alley, Japan has, from whether it be romance or just social interaction in general or just eating whatever you want, I feel like Japan is something for you. And so let me know, fellow introverts, or not fellow, I guess, introverts out there in our audience. Have I convinced you that Japan is a introvert paradise, or did I do a poor job?
We are back.
戻りました。
Yes. So, Joey, do you know what date it is today?
まあもう前に私に言ったんだけど、その前に知らなかった。でも、つまり、ゴー
Yes.
ルデンウィーク。
Yes, Golden Week. So
パチ
we
パチ
have
パチパ
this.
チ。
Yeah, we have this thing in Japan which is called Golden Week. It's like a week for holidays.
を、そう、民主のための休み。
Yes, successive
まあ
holidays.
祝いと休み。
Yeah. And so the longest how do you say it? Longest holiday?
うん、一番長い The longest
Yeah, yeah,
holiday
yeah.
year とか。
So yeah, you can take up to 9 days. Yeah, for holidays.
Take
And
up to ということは、自由になんか仕事に関しても学校に関しても9日間ぐらい取ってもいい？それともみんなはその時間をなんていうか、なんて言えばいいんだろうね。このゴールデンウィークだと、これはお休みの時間？それとも、なんか自分がやりたかったら自由に使ってくださいみたいな感じ？
no, it's like so. Okay, starting from today, it's Saturday, right? And then there's Saturday and Sunday. They're I don't know, like how do you say, like on the calendar it's their holidays, but Monday and Tuesday they're not holidays. And then starting from Wednesday, it's holiday. It's a holiday. So like 2 days.
学校でもそうなの？月曜日と火曜日。
For me, I think I got like 9 days. Yeah. But for some
全
people,
部？
yeah. For some people, they have to work for 2 days in the middle of Golden Week. So like 2 days of work, 2 days of working. Yeah, in this Golden Week.
この話一回したことあると思うんだけど、なんか1
Yeah,
年
like
前
last
この
year?
ゴールデンウィーク、
Yeah.
そのゴールデンウィークの話だけど、回答知らないからもう一度聞くんだけど、このゴールデンウィークは政府がやってること？
It's like, so in this period.
なんかバレンタインデーみたいにみんなはゴールデンウィークのことをやりたいだけ？
officially, holidays. 昭和の日と憲法記念日、緑の日、子供の日っていうのが、those days are in this Golden Week. And then every year it changes. なのね、for, how do you say? We don't know what day.
そうそう、何でしたっけ？
hard to
Thanksgiving みたいに。
ん？
Thanksgiving みたいに。その日にちが変わる？
No, I mean like, how do you say? I guess the
この
day.
1週間の中で 本当のなんか休みじゃなくて、その月曜日と火曜日は働かなくちゃいけないから、そのどの日にちが休みと休みじゃないってことは政府が決めるってこと？
So, for
ゴー
example,
ルデンウィーク
if
わかんない。
昭和の日 so 昭和の日 is April 29th, right? If it's so this year it's Saturday.
昭和の
we
日。
can we can take leave on Saturday this year. But if it was on Monday, I know, on Sunday, it's usually a holiday for everyone's show. So that means we lost one extra holiday.
そうそうそう。でも他の日にちにあげない？例えば、残念だね。
振り替え休日？
そうそう。
I'm not sure. I don't know.
ゴールデンウィークの由来は何？
ゴールデンウィークは、
いつ始まったの？
Yeah, I think I talked about that in the
いやでも全然思い出せない。
last year's episode. But I forgot the origin.
覚えてる人もいないかもしれない。
Yeah.
私も知ら
I think
ないし。
Yeah, it came from like a radio or like a movie. Yeah.
そう。思い出した。ごめんね、
Yeah.
みんなの1年前からポッドキャスト聞いてるリスナーたち。記憶はダメすぎて、ゴールデンウィークのことについて全然思い出せない。
But yeah, so I got like
で、予定は？予定ある？ゴールデンウィークの。
I will. I think I don't have any plans, but I like on 5th or 6th I'm going to meet friends. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. I like there's no like a family trip or like that kind of thing. So I think I will just spend my time studying and then reviewing what I've learned. Yeah. This term. Yeah.
まあこっちだとゴールデンウィークないけど、ついになんか夏じゃないと思うんだけど、夏って感じがした。今日初めて。走った時に結構暑くて、まあ今でも暑くなってきたんだけど、それはなんかすごく嬉しい。
That's a good thing.
夏派だから、毎回言うんだけど、久々にその夏って素晴らしいんだなと思った。
And then like, what have you been doing recently?
暑いからいや、これ、なんか今日から、なんか、今日外に出て、この君道は何だろうと思って、なんか気分がいいなと思って、それで、なんか、この気持ちはどこから来るの？なんかどこから来てんのと思って、それで、暑いから、まあ暑いだけじゃなくて、太陽が見えると思って、夏だ！夏の気持ちだ！でも、まだまだ春だから、まあ夏に入ってないけど、その夏のなんか手の中に感じた。今日だけは少なくとも。でも1週間前に雪降ってたから、残念だね。この地域は咲いて。でも今日だけは嬉しかった。
That's a good thing.
多分なんか、明日もこんな感じだったら自転車どこかに乗りに行くかな。
You get like energy, right?
そう、太陽からもらう。
Yeah.
Praise the sun.
Yeah, praise the sun.
Praise the sun はダークソウルからのミーム。
知らないよ。
ダークソウルは、まあ日本のゲームだけど、ダークソウルシリーズは。宮崎という人も作った。
宮崎？
エルデンリングというゲームについて聞いたことある？エルデンリング。
That's not my thing. And that's
でも聞いたことないの？
I don't know.
残念。まあとりあえず。何？
You want to talk about the video?
そう。今の時点で結構、何でしたっけ？多分2週間前にこの動画終わらせるようと思ってたんだけど、結局、この動画は最初の動画に似てる かな、なんかアニメーションが結構入ってる感じ。それでアニメーションどれぐらいかかるのをちょっと忘れてしまって、今週、まあ実はなんか明日終わらせようと思ってたんだけど、実際は多分来週の水曜日とか、まあ水曜日といいんだけど、に終わらせて、金曜日か土曜日にアップロードする予定。それで、まあこの新しい動画期待しててね、そう、メインチャンネルの動画。いい動画になってると思うんだから、で見てみてください。
Yeah, this fun video coming up soon.
その YouTuber がいつも言うんだけど、自分が好きな動画となんか流行る動画は全然違う。なんかその傾向がある。まあ今まではもちろん最初の動画好きで、ちょっとだけなんか人気になってたんだけど、そのブックオフの動画に関しては多分今までの動画の中では好きだった動画だけど、今の時点でその回数は一番少ないのが残念だなと思うんだけど。
Like you put so much effort on the book off video, but like no one, like no, I'm not saying.
まあ今までそう。
Most
まあ
people,
今までは。
Yeah, that's the least, how do you say, popular video so far.
Video.
Yeah.
残念だね。そのブックオフ動画まだ見てない人ならぜひぜひ見てください。結構頑張ったので、ただの漫画話じゃないだけ。
favorite video.
で、来週の動画も楽しみにしてください。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a question language related and or otherwise, and or drop a review on Apple Podcasts, or drop a YouTube comment. And we might respond to it in the next episode. This episode, we have 2 new commenters, as well as other comments. We got a lot of good comments, but we can't respond to everybody. We're sorry. But yeah, with that said, the first commenter, or new commenter. Hello, thank you for your podcast. I always enjoy listening. First, when I was living in the US, and now from Tokyo after moving here late last year. Congratulations. Today's episode, you touched on the topic of hiking/women and outdoor activities. I agree it is so hard to find hiking partners in Japan, especially female and under age 50/60. As someone who was in my 20s the first time I lived here, and now just entering my 30s, horrors. It's a real struggle. And in the US, especially the Pacific Northwest, hiking is a hobby enjoyed and popular among young people, men and women alike, and it's totally normal. But I don't find that people think about hiking the same way here, especially in Tokyo. I feel like women here, more than the US, only want to do activities where they can look perfectly pulled together and not sweat or get dirty in front of other people, like golf and yoga. Anyway, I wish you luck finding hiking friends. I'm trying to as well. Best, Sydney. Thanks so much for the comment, Sydney.
Sydney さん、ありがとうございます。はい。
I mean, if you want to give, I have one thought I want to say while it's on my mind, and then I'll give the floor to you. What I was thinking was, Shawcox actually touched on this, although we won't be talking about his hiking comic specifically, so you can read the YouTube if you want to read his full response. But something that I was thinking is that I don't think it's that, like, I do think that there is an aversion to nature, whatever, for a lot of people. But what I think more so it is the only young people you encounter are those in Tokyo. Because if you're not in Tokyo or like Osaka, you're basically in like rural Japan. It doesn't matter where you are. And like everybody, so you only ever encounter old people. So it gives you the impression because it's that all young people aren't interested in hiking because there just aren't young people outside of like the big cities basically. But anyways, go ahead, Amy.
まあ確かにそれもそうだけど、なんだろう、people in general, young people in general か。なんか、ね、女の人で特に、あんまり活動的な人が少ないのかな。なんか、そうね。そう、だからどうしたらいいんだろうね。なんか、唯一の、方法としては多分さ、そういうコミュニティがあるんだと思うよ。ミートアップとか、多分日本のミートアップの、日本バージョンのミートアップとかもあると思うから、そういうところで多分、そういう、ね、コミュニティがあると思うから、参加するっていうのもありだし、あと、なんだろうね。そもそも日本ってさ、なんだっけ、何%だっけ ?40% だっけなんか、中年の人がさ、ほとんどじゃん。いや、若い人だんだん。
Yeah. The average age is 49.
そう。だからそういうのもあってさ、ハイキング好きな人はだいたい年齢が高くなるんじゃない？
And it's important to say that that's across Japan. That is the average if you average Japan. That is not the average if you looked at a city that's not Tokyo. I've looked at them and they're like 55, 59, some places. Like, and it probably gets even older in other areas. So when that's, it's kind of brutal, honestly. And even, I don't know, in the defense of this think that I don't think, I mean, oh God, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to overlap. I may or may not be talking about this subject to some extent in the video at some point. So I'll cover that when I cover it there. But I will say is, I don't want to say, oh, it's just because they're old people and that's why they don't hike. I know plenty of, what I will say, and this is something you touched on, I mean, Japanese people still get plenty of exercise. I see all these people with their, these moms with their bikes. These, what was it, the mamacharin? And whatever, like getting exercise, but that's just because they live in somewhere with good public transit. That isn't because they're outdoorsy people. And I don't think, at least in my experience, even outdoorsy people aren't really that outdoorsy in Japan. Just to say, like, just going outside of your house is kind of outdoorsy, whereas in the US, it's like the type of outdoorsy people you get tend to be on the extremes, like. They're like free soloing a mountain or something, or like a rock face. Like you get these insane. I call it. I mean, I'm half white here. I will say is like white people have a way of doing like I'm gonna like doing activities that will kill you for fun. Whether like all like the extreme sports, like they're all like white people. I just don't. I don't know where this desire comes from, but. Yeah, I always find it very interesting with all these like extreme sports.
あともう一ついい？
Yeah.
その多分ね、なんでその若い人がそういうアウトドアのね、アクティビティがやんないかっていうと、あれだよ。first section でも言ったけど、みんな introvert じゃん。introvert。で、だいたいゲームとかインサイドでできるものがもう日本って発展してるじゃん。あと一人でやったりとかね、漫画喫茶とかね。いろいろそういうの、アクティビティもいろいろあるから、あんまり、充実しすぎて、外でやるアクティビティに手をあまりつけないっていうのも一理あるかもしれない。
I mean, it's definitely something that I noticed when I was in Japan. So, in the US, where you're already used to driving literally everywhere for even the most basic of amenities, you don't really, like in my head, driving 2 to 3 hours to go to some place that I can hike is only barely above me driving to get groceries in terms of like the mendokusai level. It's not even that. I'm like, yeah, whatever, 2 hours versus like, I don't know, 50 minutes. Like they're both in my head the same thing. Whereas in Japan, I'm like, walk for 2 minutes and go to some really awesome thing that you can do indoors, or take a train out in the middle of nowhere, or like, I don't know, get a car. And getting a car is the last thing I want to do when I'm in Japan. And so that can make it more difficult to do outdoor activities. But yeah, just because we have some other comments I'm going to hit, and we have another new commenter, this time named Trevor. And his comment goes, I found lazyfluency first on Apple Podcast. I can't remember exactly what keyword I searched for, but I think it was Japanese bilingual, as I really enjoy the format with shows like Bilingual News and Konnichiwa Podcast. To be honest, I think the first episode I heard was about authoritarian governments, and Joey went on kind of a tangent, and I was like, maybe this isn't what I was looking for. Then I unsubscribed, but weeks later, I got a suggestion on YouTube for the podcast and have really enjoyed the show since. What really has stuck out to me is how well Joey and Ayami are able to express themselves in their target language, and also how unique and structured the topic segments are. So I think I'm here to stay. Also, I find Joey to be very relatable. I'm also from California, love running while listening to Japanese podcasts / audiobooks and buying used media and clothes. I will buy Book Off merch when it comes out. Keep up the great content. Thank you, Trevor. I will clarify. Although I've been to California many times and I'm a family friend that I've hit up Lake Tahoe with a bunch, I am not from California. I am from Idaho.
Wake, 近いから正解ですよ。
Yeah, it's close. I think technically I'm the Pacific Northwest, as for like the previous comment. I think I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I think so. I can't remember. I think Idaho's in the Pacific Northwest. But one of the reasons I want to respond to this, other than we got to respond to our new commenters here, is the comment about being able to express themselves in the target language is something that's kind of for one, if you ask me or I, you can like, you know what I'm saying? We're always trying to improve, well, just in general, the whole podcast, like, especially with like, well, small things, but also like how I speak and how we exchange who's talking or whatever and splitting up. So I'm not talking too much. There's a bunch of stuff like we're trying to get better on, but also always in our heads, we appreciate the comment, but you can imagine that the middle section being something that is, what's it called? It's definitely the most experimental. I don't think I've ever seen a show that puts two people in their second language for like a middle part of the podcast. A lot of times people just like sticking to their target language, and you can make a good argument saying, well, it's better for the learner. But that is not the point of the middle section. At least that, I mean, just for people who haven't heard, the idea basically is for this very thing. Someone can listen to it and be like, hey, what do you say? He said it stuck out to me the most, or really stuck out to me. And you're like, oh, and the other notion I'm trying to push is, yeah, it's okay to use your second target language as a person learning the language. It's not a crime, as I feel like a lot of times it can be discussed as a crime, and especially it can be discussed as a crime to listen to it. Yeah, it's like worse than it's like a thought crime or something, or even or just a straight up crime. And so
完璧にならないと喋っちゃいけないんだよみたいなマイナスに人がいるからね。
Well, and for people who are native speaker of one language, the idea is that it'll make the other person more relatable if they're speaking their language. Because I've listened to bilingual news, and something I've noticed is when, like, if they ever respond to, or like I've looked at some of their Twitters and other stuff before, is where a lot of times the Japanese commenters, which are they're targeted towards Japanese audience, they kind of only respond a lot of time. I mean, sometimes they'll mention Michael, who's the other person, but they address Mami, who's a speaker, like almost primarily every time exclusively when addressing something, and they refer maybe to the other speaker, Michael, but they're addressing Mami, who's always speaking Japanese, because Michael doesn't speak Japanese inside the podcast. And so the idea is, if we're both speaking, hopefully it'll make both of us more approachable.
うちら天才。
Do you have any other thoughts before we've won?
あとね、なんか面白いのはね、ブックオフのマーチを公式にうちらで売ったらどうですか？オディティのさ、T シャツとかのさ、デザイン使って。
So, I mean, I would love to have book off merch, but that would fall under copyright infringement. But if we did it in parody, if we made a parody version that was clearly parody, then you could totally do it. And I would not be against that. I just have to think about what kind of design I'd want to do. But I mean, that right now that's definitely far away goal. But you need to have merch. You need to be able to buy merch to then sell. So so still far away, but yeah, I'll keep that in mind. And then the last comment from Shawkox, and well, this is part of the comment, but I felt like we had to have one comment that was referring to last episodes of third places, and this is Shawkox's. My third place is a boba shop with free arcade machines. I chat up customers and make recommendations. I'm friends with the owner and send her books that I find interesting, and just spend hours chatting with the workers and trying new drink flavors. It's also closing at some point soon because the owner doesn't have the time, since she also sells houses and does reality TV. A tragic loss coming soon. I am sorry for your third place loss, Shawkox.
Boba nanda.
I even though it's like tacky, I can't help. I like boba a lot, but it's so expensive. Anytime I've been to one that sells it. And the notion of having in America, last time I bought it, but I think I was was I in Portland, Oregon or something? It was straight up like $7 or something, $7 or $8.
まあそんなぐらいよ。
Is it crazy?
なんかね、
That's insane.
もともと
It's tea. What's going on?
これさ、多分ね、知らない人もいるかもしれないけど、ボバのオリジン知ってる？どこの国か。
Isn't it Taiwan?
いや、台湾だよ。なんかさ、なんか一部の人でさ、コリアンだと思ってる人いてさ、いやいや、台湾だからって思うけど、まあそうそう。で、
Yeah, Koreans totally, I feel like, kind of usurped that.
まあ確かにね。で、
Now you know how the Chinese people probably feel about ramen.
ああ、確かにな。で、そうで、台湾だと、なんかね、今はちょっと高いかもしれないけど、今流行ってるじゃん。で、もうずっと前、もう10年、20年前とかは、台湾で多分1杯2、300円で売ってたって聞いたから、高いのは、なんていうの？他の国だけだと思う。そう。日本だとね、これぐらいのカップで、これぐらいっていうか、まあ、普通の、なんて言えばいいんだろうね。M サイズとかで、まあ、500、600円はするね。5 to 6.
You know what it is I'm, well, more like 4 right now because of the conversion rate. But I think it's because I'm just used to everything being in big sizes. And so if I'm paying $7 for something, dude, it better be big. Remember our 7-Eleven videos? I still have the cups from those. That is value. 7-Eleven, you get cups like this big, twice the size of a human stomach. I don't even think those things were like more than $5. The slushies.
So slush, なんだっけ?
The double big gulp.
Big gulp.
Yeah. And so I'm like $7. You know what I'm saying? So as a man who loves book-offs, it does not matter how good your thing. I don't care about how good your product is, irrespective of price, because we're broke boys out here. So if you don't have, you could have the best thing in the world, but if the kospa, like the actual value you're getting, isn't good, like based on the price, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. It has to be both good and cheap, and that's why book-off's amazing. But I am. That does sound like a really fun third place, though. Oh, go ahead, Naomi.
じゃあエピソードの最後にどれだけブックオフの愛がすごいかっていうのをね、また言うっていう面白い。
I mean, it won't be the last time I talk about book off. I'm just imagining a book shop with arcade just sounds like a blast.
ねえ。いいな。
Yeah, I'm more of I mean, the problem is like game stores normally don't really have food and beverages, so I just kind of browse. I just browse inventory.
不思議な組み合わせじゃない？ボバとアーケードが。
Yeah, but I can imagine it. I mean, it's very California too. Yeah, like arcade. I think California is one of the only places in the U.S., if not the only place in the U.S. that really has any arcades, because they had a lot carried over from like when it used to be popular. California is like has a lot of. It is very common for most things that niche things that exist kind of only exist in California, because they both have like the space for it, and they also have like a more like diverse population set, and they have money. So like a lot of stuff that people like that we've talked about, like shotgun stuff from California, I have no personal experience ever seeing in my life, but I know of it because I know a lot of Californians. And I'm slightly envious of that, but I'm not envious of the Strodes in California. So anyways, thanks for the comments, everyone, especially our 2 new commenters. Hopefully I do not make you unsubscribe again, Trevor, but what I will say is
もうやったら how dare you だよ。
You know, I have tendencies to talk about authoritarian governments at times. It is what it is. Yeah, thanks for the comments, everybody. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and or just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com, and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off. Jane.
Bye bye.